Kara, thank you so much for speaking with me. I am just honored to have you. First, why don't you introduce yourself so that we can know a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Melissa. I loved having you reach out to me. It was so wonderful to get the invite. And yes, women in commerce is a passion of mine. As you know, we were working on it together. So happy to be back. My name is Kara Rousseau. I am a senior level marketer. I have led large teams. I've been in the commerce and retail and entertainment business. I am a mom, and I am currently focused on what my next step is.
Amazing. And last time we spoke was maybe a year or two ago when we did our Women in Commerce event at Walmart Connect in Cannes. We worked on that together, and it was such a lovely event, and it was really meaningful to the women that attended. And so I really enjoyed working with you on that. I know we share this passion, and so
Yes.
I know you've been up to some interesting things that might help all the people listening to this. So why don't we start with what is your superpower?
I don't think I have one superpower. I actually think it's about combining two different strengths I would say that becomes or has become my superpower. So I think the first is vision. I've been told that I am very quick to gain clarity on what the vision is. Like, this is what we need to do, here's the destination, and then build the strategy to get there. But the second piece, which I think is maybe specific to how I approach things, is with empathy. So
Mhm.
I really enjoy and I aim to help the people on my team really discover what their strengths are. What's their superpower? How are they going to own that vision for themselves? Because I think that's when the magic happens, right? It's when you go from, there's a little bit of mentoring there, certainly, but I think it's also about empowering individuals to not just instruct them, but that's when it goes from instruction to inspiration, and they can own it and really have even better results. Right? Because they're using their unique superpowers together to accomplish it. I would think I've always been that way, even on a personal level. I've always been the person that friends and family members come to for advice because I can see what is kind of needed and the support that's needed or the potential avenues to help them navigate. But then I'm looking to really just kind of support them by helping them, identify and tap into their own strengths to get there. So I feel like that's kind of who I've always been, or the person to make them laugh. It depends on what they need.
All right. Well, now I know who to call when I need advice. So,
You've got my number.
okay, so you took a career break. What was the moment you realized it was time to take a pause?
It wasn't one moment, Melissa. It was a series of events and moments that culminated into this, like, I cannot ignore it. And I don't know if you'll agree, but I believe strongly that sometimes the universe gets louder when it wants you to pay attention and, give you that wake up call. And essentially, that's what happened to me over the course of a few months. So, the first was a personal health scare. So I had a breast biopsy come back with atypical cells that were potentially cancerous, which was terrifying. Many women, I'm sure, can relate to that. I then had my mother, who I'm very close with. She is in her 80s, incredibly fit and, still biking 27 miles at a time, was struck by a car that was driven by a teenager and it nearly killed her. So she ended up in, intensive care, and it was a very long recovery. So kind of all hands were on deck. It was a major shock to myself, to all of my siblings. And then last was my daughter Chloe was entering into her senior year of high school. And just for context there, I've really had two things that I've been focused on for the last many years, and that's my job and my daughter. I'm a divorced mom, and I've essentially been raising her solo since she was 3. So we are incredibly close, we're bonded, we're a team. And this idea of, oh my gosh, she's going away to college in a year.
Mhm.
And I've been, I prioritize being a good mom, but as an executive, you well know you miss
Mhm.
things. And you have to, you have to be very thoughtful about that, about when you're with your child, being with them. And I just, I was struggling with that. So I think in the back of my mind, I had always thought, okay, when Chloe goes to school, maybe I'll think
Hmm.
about my next chapter then. And then life had different ideas and said, no, you better recalibrate your priorities now and pay attention because you're going to miss it. So essentially that was my moment. And
Yeah.
I said, okay, I have accomplished so much. I've been working for 32 years, Melissa. So 32 years kind of pushing and climbing the corporate ladder. And I finally got to, being essentially the chief marketer, the head of marketing creative at Walmart Connect, which obviously major division in the Fortune 1, and was really so proud of what I was doing, what I had built with the team. And there's always more to do. There's always more
Hmm.
to do. There's never going to be a good time to leave. But I could not ignore, the attention I needed to pay to my personal life.
I so relate to this because I have a junior in high school and a freshman, and I'm thinking about her next year. And that is, yeah, time does go by fast, as they say. Sounds like you've been up to quite a bit. Anything
Yeah,
else
I was just gonna say, like,
since you
I,
left Walmart Connect? You just
yeah,
named a lot of things. Anything else
yeah.
to add to the list?
Okay, so it's actually been over a year, Melissa, which is
Wow.
crazy because time flies. And I was super intentional when I first left. I was like, okay, the first 3 months, it's my health and my family, right?
Mhm.
So got the surgery, supported my mom, was with Chloe, going to volleyball games and every college visit and applications. But then as I kind of, as that we moved past that stage, I was like, all right, what do I want to use this time for? And so I kind of call this my, connection and expansion phase, and I'm still in it, right? So it's everything from just saying yes to things that I wanted to do, wanted to learn, maybe was afraid or just didn't have the time to do. So I started Pilates. I'm working out regularly. I went to Broadway shows in New York on a Wednesday afternoon because I could. Right? I love it. It's
Amazing.
inspirational. It's energetic. I started dating with intention, right? And spoiler alert, it works. I actually have a partner that we just celebrated 1 year, and
Amazing.
thank you. I don't, and honestly, it's that intention and creating the space for it. I have done some advisory work. So, we were talking about commerce media and how complex, how exciting it is. It's constantly moving and growing. And we know that essentially any company that has a direct relationship with the customer and has data wants to figure out how is the best way for me to, to monetize that or to drive meaningful revenue. And so since I've been spending time in this, I've just as I've been, had my time and people have been connecting, reaching out to me, and I have the opportunity to advise, and I enjoy using my experience to then help and support in that way. What else have I done? Learning. So I've been, tooling. We were talking about AI. How is AI impacting things? Well, for me, I'm not in the corporate environment using it, so I'm just tooling around with it on my own, right? And I
Hmm.
don't think I think that's a really good way to do it, which is to try all the tools, play around with it, get a sense for what it can do. Um, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I have actually learned, I was involved as I've been connecting with people. So a big
Hmm.
part of this is, and this would be something I would advise others to do too, is it's the connecting with people, whether it's friends, colleagues, and that will different opportunities will emerge for you to satisfy your curiosity. I've always been interested in podcasting, and one of my, former colleagues and a friend of mine, Miriam Banakaram, started a podcast that, she was launching it from the ground up. It's called The Messy Parts, and it's
Hmm.
like I definitely recommend it to this audience because it's exactly what we're all talking about, which is there's disruption and corporate America is hard, right?
Hmm.
And
Oh, yeah.
when a lot of these podcasts people come on and they talk about how shiny and wonderful all the highlights are, But it's kind of rare that you have these very successful leaders willing to come on and say, yeah, there was new management that came in and I was pushed out, or, you know, I needed to make a pivot. And so I had a side gig that I started into a business. And so that's essentially what the messy parts is. And she's been able to get huge, industry leader talking about how messy it has been, and yet how the messy part actually is generally the point of inflection, where then
Mhm.
something better comes or emerges because you're kind of forced into a new path.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of learning with her behind the scenes. What does it take to build a podcast? How do you measure a podcast? How do you sell and monetize a podcast? Right. And see the growth of it. So it's just, that's again, satisfying my curiosity. When when you're like us and you are a type A personality, kind of always driven by curiosity,
Hmm.
it doesn't stop. It's just
Yeah.
about how you choose to find those things to invest your time and energy.
Wow. You've been very busy. Maybe you haven't been working like a corporate job, but you've been doing a lot of fun things. That's amazing. One question I have for you is, did you struggle with the identity shift? Like, how did that feel? And you just did to now. You just introduced yourself, not as a corporate identity, but like as your own person.
100%. Like, okay, so I very intentionally didn't say former chief marketer of
Yeah.
Walmart Connect or former senior vice president of Disney advertising, right? It's hard, Melissa. It's very hard, right? Because we are in a culture of achievement.
Mhm.
Let's just be honest. And I have always been a high achiever, right? A perfectionist that's trying to drive for, the grades, then the title, then the compensation. And it's a rush and it's validating. But if we're honest with ourselves, right, it's validating, but that validation is external.
Hmm.
And, I have had to really think about kind of taking my own advice. So I have a daughter who's following in my footsteps, salutatorian at a New York City school for when she graduated, freshman at Cornell. And she gets stressed with trying to do her best and have that result in the grades or the opportunities. And what I have said to her, and now I'm taking my own advice, right, which is, your accomplishments are what you do, it's not who you are,
Hmm.
right? My title and my role, that was what I did. And what allowed me to do that were my traits, right? And traits that I've nurtured and developed. What's incredibly liberating at this stage is to go, okay, where do I want to focus those energies right now? It does feel uncomfortable the first few times. And I will tell you, Melissa, that though I don't think I mentioned it, I'm also participating in this group of other, very senior C-level executive women that are all in transition. And when we get together and talk about these things, that identity crisis, if you will,
Hmm.
is something that we of course will talk about because it's real.
Hmm. Yeah. So stepping away from the day to day and how frenetic our industry is, I mean, it's kind of like a mouse wheel that feels sometimes that you're like on. Did it change how you think about leadership or ambition or success, having the ability to kind of step away from everything and think about it?
I don't think that stepping away changed it, Melissa. I think it was actually just age and experience that
Mm.
changed it. So to me, that was gradual. And I don't know if maybe some of the folks listening to this or you yourself can feel this, but I think, over time, as I got older, more experience, as I had a daughter, as I, faced different things in my life, your priorities start to change and expand and evolve. And for
Mhm.
me, this, success, we just talked about, like, yeah, it's a rush. Like, I love the title, I love the compensation, I love the challenge of the work that I was doing and the results, right? But to me, success always included happiness, right? And to me, I know that what makes me happy is coming from the meaningful relationships in my life. So it's always been family and friends and my daughter, certainly. But even on the job, like I loved, we talked about earlier how you and I worked together on the Women in Commerce event. Like I love connecting with people. I love it. I
Hmm.
loved mentoring. I loved leading my team. Right. So I think for me, success always had that element of like, it's not just the money or not just the title. It's also, being happy in a way that
Hmm.
satisfies my values. Um, Ambition, that's an interesting one because I see ambition is just drive, right? It's drive and energy. And
Hmm.
you can't take ambition out of the person, right? I think what changes is where I point it. So I
Hmm.
was pointing all that energy and that focus clearly at the job and the tasks that needed to be done, the work, the exciting work that we were doing. Now I'm just pointing that in different directions. I'm pointing at it, really thinking through what do I want for my next chapter, right? What do I want my legacy to be? And, just a small L, not a big L, but we all
Hmm.
have to think about that, right? So I don't, so yeah, I don't think that ambition changed. Leadership, again, I think leadership is one of those things that's a trait. So I've had people on my teams that were very junior that I was like, they are leaders, right? And
Hmm.
that's because of the way they show up in the world. Whether it's really listening and then being able to influence or impact other people. So for me, I think about leadership as a trait that's you're able to bring out the best in people, you're able to inspire them, help them be their best self. To me, that's great leadership. And so um, it's interesting because, I look at, I had what, over 225 people on my team, but,
Hmm.
and I'm interacting with all of these senior leaders in the interval community that had thousands of people on their team. They were C levels, they were CEOs of companies, but they have just as much leadership right now. And they may be doing it by doing a podcast or writing a
Hmm.
book or writing a Substack, right? And you're reaching out and you're able to be a leader because you're impacting and inspiring others. So I think, it shifts a little bit because you can broaden your perspective, but the
Yeah.
core of it is the same.
So the interval, is that something that, how do you get involved in that?
Oh, okay. So the interval was kind of something that happened very organically. And, I mentioned that I was kind of reaching out and reconnecting with all kinds of folks in my past. And one of the folks that I reached out to was Miriam Banakaram. And I said, hey, Miriam, I am, entering into this new phase of my life. And I admire how you've constantly reinvented yourself. You want to meet? And she said, you know what? I'm already meeting with Shelley Huff, a constant, executive C level in multiple industries, and a few other women. And we're just getting together monthly and we're talking about stuff. We're sharing books that we're reading. We're talking about, issues that matter to us and bouncing ideas off of each other and learning from one another and supporting each other from lived experience. And that's what the origin of the interval was. And it developed over the year by word of mouth into now a bona fide peer-led C-level community. And it's C-level women that are in transition. And, I would say there's 100 members now. And Shelly and Miriam, Shelly's leading the effort. The way to get involved is if you're a C-level or senior leader that is either thinking about it or you have already made that transition, you think that would appeal to you, I'd say go to the website. It's the intervalcommunity.com. And
Hmm.
there's information on membership. I know it's not for everybody because if you're more junior, maybe that's not the right fit. But I think the idea, right, of connecting with peers who are in the same place that you are, right, that
Hmm.
have the same lived experience where you can support each other, help each other, advise each other, and even bring other people from your networks into the circle. That's the benefit of it.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, the fact that you have 100 members and it just grew organically,
organically. Yep.
Like-minded people, that's a big thing. So,
It's incredibly valuable. I think the value of community
hmm.
anytime, but certainly during times of disruption
Yeah.
is so important. We will share books and ideas and people that are saying, "Oh, I'm thinking of writing a book or I'm looking at a portfolio career, right? That is going to be a combination of advisory work and board work and maybe some
Hmm.
consulting, right? Lots of different paths that start to emerge that maybe otherwise may not have been something considered.
Yeah. Well, all that, it sounds like the traits and characteristics and things that you like to do at your job, you're now also still doing all those things. So,
I'm trying. I'm trying. Yeah. I mean, I think again, that's what drives me, right? It
yeah.
fuels me. I love to learn from other people and learn from experiences, and then try to alchemize that and then share it with others, right? I like to be inspired. I like to inspire others. And that's to me, that fuels me. It fills me up.
Well, after a year, speaking of, what's next? What are you thinking about doing?
A lot of the same, I think. Honestly,
Hmm.
I have certainly been approached for full-time positions, but in all honesty, I really like the ability to use my time and break it up in a way that fits my priorities now, right? I'm kind of
Yeah.
designing my life to fit my current priorities. And, I love commerce media. I love entertainment media. I will continue to do some advisory work there and maybe some consulting. I will absolutely still prioritize my family and my loved ones. Um, I'm also looking at different creative pursuits for myself. So,
Hmm.
and I love conversations like this too. Like if I forget how much I really enjoyed just talking to others, connecting with others, and sharing experiences. So who knows? Maybe some more speaking. We'll see.
I think you should absolutely do that. I think it's really inspiring. All the things you talked about, from the podcast of the messy parts to kind of how you approach thinking about taking a career step. But it seems like you're happy, you're healthy, and you're
Yeah,
thriving in this kind of environment, which is really more flexibility in your life too. If you want to go see a show in the middle of the afternoon, not feeling guilty that
yeah.
that's something that you can do readily.
Yeah, and I think, you and I briefly talked at the beginning that, we both know people who are, leaving, whether it's for their own accord,
Hmm.
that they're making that choice, or because there's been a lot of disruption and layoffs and things. And so I've absolutely had a lot of people come to me and say, like, what's your advice? Like, what would you do? And I
Hmm.
think one of the most important things to do is really understand that you right now have like the one thing, the one resource that you did not have all this time when you were working like crazy, and that is time. You
Yes.
have time. And as scary as that can be, right? Because
Mhm.
some people don't, I'm very fortunate right now. I know there's different people at different stages in their career and financially they may need to get right back in, but take the time to really think about, what do I want to do with this time? Reconnect with others in your life because it is the most organic way to fuel your soul and also potentially create opportunities for you or just help you see something you wouldn't otherwise see. I
Hmm.
would, definitely remember that the messy parts is part of the journey. Don't fall victim to thinking it's all supposed to be a straight line.
Hmm.
So just embrace it and be like, okay, there's something better on the other side. Um, I think also it is about recalibrating, right? Take the time to be in quiet and stillness because it's only, I was doing a lot of meditation, especially the first 3 months, a lot of meditation, a lot of journaling, right? Because
Hmm.
I think when you're frenetically running around getting things done, you don't have the silence and the stillness that it needs to actually reflect and be able to think about it. That's where you're going to gain the clarity, right? You're going to
Hmm.
gain clarity on what your priorities are. It's also when you may have an idea that is your breakthrough idea, right? In this stillness. But we don't often allow ourselves that. So I'd say use this time also to recalibrate on what your priorities are and give yourself permission to rest, permission to have fun, even if you have to go and you feel an urgency to get another job. Like if you don't really think about what your priorities are, the risk of getting into something similar that may not be the best thing for you is high, right? So it's a great time to kind of
Totally.
step back and think through, like, okay, well, if I could design it, what would it be like? And
Hmm.
and then go into the search or into your next act with that in mind.
Yeah. Well, incredible advice. Thank you so much. One of the other things I've noticed with a lot of women I've been talking to is they say yes. And that's what you said to me when I reached out. You said, well, can I interview you and talk to you about these things? You said, sure, I'd love to, which I really appreciate because I think you had great advice for so many people. And I will be listening to that podcast. So I will see
Yeah, definitely
you
listen to the
there.
podcast. Check out the interval. I'm trying to think of other things. I mean, I also love Good Hang, of course, with Amy Poehler, and what else am I listening to? I, of course, love Julie Louise-Dreyfus, Wiser Than Me. So there's
Hmm.
all kinds of fun stuff out there. But Messy Parts has risen, not just because I was behind the scenes on it, but because it's inspirational and it's
Yeah.
real.
All right. Well, we'll check it out. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Melissa. It's so nice to reconnect with you.